Do you believe in forgiving or forgetting?
Are you ready for a shocking truth? I smiled through my mom's retirement party. I clapped for every cousin as they got their little moment on stage. I kept nodding like it was all fine, and then I quietly took a selfie, walked out of the building, and left without saying a single word. By the time I got home and posted that photo, my sister was already blowing up my phone, crying about how I had ruined everything, even though all I had done was show people a truth that had been sitting in front of them for years, ignored, brushed aside, and dismissed like my role in this family never mattered. The whole night was supposed to be about celebrating my mom after 35 years of working in the same school district. I don't know if you've ever been to one of those retirement events, but the idea is simple. They bring together colleagues, family, friends, and a handful of community people who all stand up, tell stories, thank the retiree for their service, and share memories about how much she gave. My mom deserved all of that and more. She gave her whole life to that school, often at the expense of her own health, and she held together not just classrooms, but the actual families that relied on her. That was never in doubt. What became clear, though, as the speeches rolled on and the slideshow kept flashing, was who got credit and who got erased. One by one, my cousins were called out, applauded for things that, let's be honest, barely scratched the surface of what it meant to support my mom. Tyler got a shout out for helping set up the AV equipment. Emily got mentioned for baking cookies, which by the way came from a store and still had the packaging in the recycling bin at Mom's house earlier that week. Mark was praised for coordinating rides for appointments, when in reality, he had done exactly one pickup in the past year and left my mom waiting outside because he forgot. Meanwhile, I sat there, knowing I was the one who had been driving her every week to her checkups, filling her prescriptions when she was too tired to wait in line, and staying up late to call her insurance company when paperwork got rejected. Not one word about any of that. Not even a glance in my direction. It wasn't oversight. It was erasure, and I knew exactly who orchestrated it. My sister Jenna had her fingerprints all over this. She was the self-appointed event manager, the one who handled invitations, decorations, and the program. She's always been obsessed with appearances and narratives, the kind of person who will spend more energy making sure the story looks clean than actually doing the work. She decided who got highlighted. She wrote the script for the speeches. She made sure every cousin looked like a star, and she made sure I looked like no one. It wasn't a mistake, it was control. I felt that lump in my throat as I watched the slideshow wrap up with a group photo that didn't even include me, even though I was standing right there when it was taken. My mom looked happy, and I wasn't about to ruin her moment with a scene. I smiled, I clapped again, and then I walked out. I stepped into the hallway, lifted my phone, and snapped a selfie, calm face, nothing dramatic. That was my quiet rebellion. When I got home, I opened my laptop and thought carefully before posting. I didn't rant. I didn't accuse anyone directly. I just wrote, "Celebrating Mom today. Thanks to everyone who handled the easy parts. Grateful I could be there for the rest." Then I tagged Mom's old school, not Jenna, not the cousins. That's all. Alongside it, I linked a small album titled The Rest. In it, I had dropped screenshots and records, blurred names, but clear dates and tasks. Appointment confirmations, prescription pickups, emails with the insurance company, reminders on the shared care calendar I had created. It wasn't emotional. It was factual. It showed exactly who had been there for the grind, the invisible labor that never makes it to the stage. The reaction was immediate. Former colleagues of my mom started liking the post, leaving comments like, "Thank you for all you've done," and "I had no idea you were managing so much." Then came the private messages. Donors who had supported the retirement event started asking questions. One wrote, "Wasn't the event supposed to be through the school?" Another asked if the event company was tied to the family. That was when my phone started buzzing nonstop. Jenna called first. She was crying, saying I was making her look bad, that I was twisting things, that I was embarrassing Mom. I told her, calmly, that nothing I posted was untrue. It wasn't my problem if the truth didn't fit her version of the story. She kept going, saying I had no idea how hard she had worked to pull everything together, and I reminded her that hard work isn't just centerpieces and speeches. Sometimes it's the stuff that never gets applause but keeps people alive. She didn't want to hear it. Then the real curveball hit. As I was talking to Jenna, an email notification popped up. It was from Mom's union representative. The subject line said, "Clarification needed, was the event company family affiliated?" That was the exact wording. I froze and I smiled to myself because that was the question no one had expected to land in my inbox. And at that moment I knew this story wasn't going to end with one photo or one caption. This was just the beginning. When I saw the email from the union rep asking whether the event company was family affiliated, I knew instantly that this wasn't just about bruised feelings or a skipped mention at a party, because questions like that do not come out of nowhere. They surface when someone with authority notices inconsistencies, and the fact that it landed in my inbox rather than disappearing into a black hole told me they were taking it seriously, which meant the stakes had quietly escalated from social slights to money, and money always exposes what people try hardest to hide. The truth is, a few years back, when my mom was still working but already struggling with fatigue and mounting medical needs, I had suggested we create a small joint account to cover her copays, prescription refills, and the endless stream of little expenses that always come with medical care, because dealing with insurance in this country is not just about paying bills, it is about fighting denials, managing deductibles, and staying one step ahead of deadlines that never forgive you if you miss them. The account was never huge, just a buffer, a practical way to separate her needs from the chaos of her personal checking and the household bills my dad handled. I had access because I was the one making the calls, scheduling the rides, and fronting the costs when things slipped. At the time it felt smart, and it worked, until Jenna found a way to get her hands on it. She had pressured us about a year ago, framing it as a convenience, saying she could help manage Mom's care by having access to, though she rarely if ever handled the unglamorous stuff, but she liked having her fingers in the pie. So I agreed to add her for limited access, mostly so she would stop accusing me of being controlling. I should have known better, because by the time the retirement party rolled around, I started noticing unusual withdrawals, not large enough to scream theft, but consistent enough to raise suspicion. There were payments labeled to a vendor tied to the event, another to a service fee, and then a line item that caught my eye, a transfer that traced back to Jenna's marketing contact, the same person who had helped design the slideshow and decorations. I remember staring at that statement, my stomach dropping, because it wasn't just the fact that money had been misused, it was that she had done it with the exact account that was supposed to protect Mom's medical security. It was no longer about me being ignored on stage. It was about Jenna using the safety net I had built for Mom to fund her own image-driven spectacle. I didn't yell, I didn't call her, I didn't even confront her face-to-face, because I knew that arguing would only create another scene where she painted herself as the victim and me as the cold, bitter sister. Instead, I went online, logged into the bank, and quietly revoked her access. I froze outgoing transfers and arranged for the balance to be shifted into a brand new account in Mom's name only, with alerts set up so I would be notified of any unusual activity. Then I wrote one short but pointed email to both Mom and the union rep, attaching a screenshot of the questionable charges and stating very clearly that medical funds should cover medical needs. I didn't accuse Jenna, I didn't call it fraud, I didn't add any emotional language. I knew the power was in showing facts, not feelings. The ripple was immediate. The rep wrote back asking if donors had been told about the financial arrangements for the event. Mom looked stunned and admitted she had left all the logistics to Jenna, who had insisted it was easier if she handled everything. Within hours, donors who had contributed to the party fund started emailing too, not in anger at first, but in confusion. They thought their contributions were being routed through the school's official celebration committee, not into an account that had been linked to family. Questions snowballed. Who approved the vendor? Why wasn't the school tagged in the donation page? What exactly was included in the service fee? Meanwhile, Jenna was in meltdown mode, calling me dramatic, accusing me of sabotage, insisting I was destroying Mom's night. I didn't take the bait. My only response was a single sentence. I am happy to send the bank statements to anyone who needs clarity. That was all it took, because donors and colleagues don't trust tears and excuses. They trust numbers and documentation. By evening, word had spread beyond family. A former teacher who had donated for the celebration messaged me privately, saying she wanted to know how to get her money back, because if she had known it was tied to Jenna's business contacts, she never would have contributed. Another donor asked if funds could be redirected to a scholarship in Mom's name through the district instead. I answered honestly, I didn't know, but I could connect them to the union rep. I let the rep handle the rest. And then, just as I thought I had seen enough, another email came in, this time a forwarded invoice that made everything crystal clear. At the bottom of the page, in small but undeniable print, was a referral bonus line item tied directly to Jenna's company. She hadn't just funneled money through our mom's medical account, she had arranged for her own business to get a payout from the event itself. I sat back, stunned but not surprised, because this was exactly who she was, someone who could look our mother in the eye, toast her at a podium, and still use the moment to enrich herself. I didn't blast it out, not yet. I simply saved the invoice, attached it to my growing folder of receipts, and whispered to myself, I did not know Jenna's company was on the invoice. That was enough for now. The proof existed, the questions were growing louder, and Jenna was digging her own hole deeper with every denial. The beauty of it all was that I didn't have to push anymore. All I had to do was sit still and let the truth breathe. When the union representative followed up with more questions about donor transparency, I knew Jenna's usual strategy of crying louder than anyone else and framing herself as the overworked savior of the family was about to collapse. Because this wasn't just about sibling rivalry anymore, it was about compliance, accountability, and the kind of paper trail that people in professional environments know how to interpret without the need for anyone to raise their voice. And if there is one thing my sister has never been able to handle, it is a factual record that undercuts her polished stories. The rep asked point-blank whether donors were told that the event vendor was connected to our family, and that single line stripped away every layer of Jenna's spin. Because her entire version of events had depended on the assumption that no one would ever stop to ask if her volunteer coordination came with a kickback, and the moment the question landed, she scrambled, insisting everything was informal. Everything was goodwill, everything was personal contribution and not tied to her business at all. I let her run with it for a full day, listening to the family group chat fill with her desperate assurances and with relatives chiming in to say how hard she had worked, how much stress she had taken on, how ungrateful I was for not appreciating the effort. And through all of it I kept quiet, because I knew the louder she talked, the worse the contrast would look when the truth finally appeared in plain sight. That truth arrived in the form of receipts that no amount of emotional framing could erase. I had the donation link archived, showing clearly that contributions were directed not through the school's official celebration committee, but through a third-party payment platform that Jenna controlled. I had the invoice with the referral bonus line item showing her company's involvement. I had the bank statement confirming the outflow from Mom's medical buffer account to a vendor connected to Jenna's network. These were not opinions, they were facts, and facts do not waver when someone cries or accuses or begs. They just sit there, immovable, until someone has the courage to look directly at them. So, while Jenna kept insisting she was the victim of a smear campaign, I wrote one calm, measured email to all the donors who had reached out to me privately. In that email, I did not rant, I did not accuse, I did not drag Jenna's name through the mud. Instead, I wrote, if you intended your support to go toward honoring Patricia Hill's classroom legacy, you may request a refund from the vendor directly, or you may redirect your gift to the official school scholarship fund, which will be created in her name by the district. I attached clear instructions, a contact number at the union office, and links to both options. That was it. No commentary, no sibling drama, just a roadmap for anyone who wanted to make sure their goodwill actually honored the woman they had meant to celebrate. The effect was immediate. Within a day, several donors began requesting refunds, and the vendor, caught off guard, started sending out vague pushback emails, asking donors to be patient while they sorted through unexpected issues. Those vague responses, of course, only raised more eyebrows, because nothing makes people angrier than realizing their generosity might have been mishandled. I didn't have to say a word. The vendor's stalling spoke louder than I ever could. I simply forwarded each message to the union representative and the school principal, then went silent. Meanwhile, the family group chat lit up like a bonfire. Relatives accused me of being dramatic, of embarrassing Mom, of dragging private matters into the open. One even said I was trying to ruin Jenna's career, as if Jenna's career wasn't built on a constant recycling of borrowed shine from other people's work. I responded once, with a single sentence that shut down the thread. I am only sharing facts, and I am happy to hop on a call with the rep if anyone wants clarity. That was the end of my participation. The rest of their noise washed over me without impact, because I had receipts, and receipts beat stories every single time. Then the principal stepped in. He emailed Jenna and me together, stating clearly that the school was pausing any official celebration posts until they had sorted out the financial inconsistencies. That one sentence hit Jenna harder than anything I had said, because reputation is her oxygen, and having the school publicly freeze recognition because of her handling of funds was a direct blow to the image she lives for. She panicked, texting me privately in all caps, demanding that I delete the album I had posted with the records, warning me that if I didn't, she would go nuclear. Her threat was meant to scare me into silence, but it only confirmed how cornered she felt. I looked at her message, took a breath, and typed back 4 words that I knew would cut deeper than anything else. Put it in writing. And with that, the game shifted. She had spent years painting me as controlling, bitter, and joyless, the one who always complicated things with rules and details. But in that moment, with the rep asking official questions, donors pulling back their money, and the school halting their praise, Jenna was no longer in control of the narrative. She was the one cornered by her own shortcuts, and I was the one holding the calm, factual record that made every accusation she hurled at me ring hollow. I saved her threatening message, added it to my folder of documents, and closed my laptop because I didn't need to respond further. The evidence spoke for itself, and all I had to do now was wait for the next question to surface, knowing it would, because once institutions start digging, they never stop until they understand exactly what went wrong. And Jenna had no idea how much she had already exposed by underestimating me. By the time the fallout from the donors and the school began to take shape, it was clear to me that things had reached a point where family drama was no longer just family drama, because now there were outside eyes watching every move, and once outside eyes get involved, the entire landscape changes, and suddenly every lie, every half-truth, every manipulation is exposed to daylight that cannot be spun away. It was in that tense moment, when the family group chat had devolved into insults and accusations, and the school had announced it would pause all official celebration posts, that Jenna decided the only way forward was to stage what she called a family meeting, which meant sitting us all down at Mom's kitchen table under the guise of clearing the air, though everyone knew it was really about Jenna trying to seize back control of a narrative that had already slipped through her fingers. We gathered on a Saturday afternoon, not for warmth or comfort, but because Jenna had demanded it, and because my parents, tired and overwhelmed, wanted it over with. Mom sat at the head of the table, looking smaller than usual, weighed down by the idea that her retirement, something she had earned after decades of giving herself to others, had turned into a battle between her daughters. Dad mostly stayed quiet, fiddling with his coffee cup, clearly wishing he could disappear. Jenna, on the other hand, walked in with papers in her hands and that practiced confidence in her voice, the same confidence that had carried her through speeches, presentations, and years of talking people into believing her version of events. She started the meeting with a long statement about how much she had sacrificed, how much stress she had endured, and how she had taken on responsibilities no one else was willing to handle. She framed herself as the only one brave enough to step up and accused me of jealousy, bitterness, and an obsession with control that she claimed had always poisoned this family. For a few minutes, I let her have the floor, because I knew the more she spoke, the more hollow her words would sound, especially in front of Mom and Dad, who had seen the reality with their own eyes even if they preferred to look away. When she finished, I didn't argue, I didn't raise my voice, I didn't even address her accusations directly. Instead, I reached into my bag, pulled out a single page I had printed, and slid it across the table. On that page was a simple timeline of events, dates of donations, transfers from the account, the invoice with the referral bonus, and the school's official statement about pausing their posts. Every point was sourced with a document or a screenshot. I told them, calmly and without emotion, this is the situation. These are not opinions. These are records. Jenna immediately tried to dismiss it as manipulative, claiming I had cherry-picked data to make her look bad. But before she could build momentum, I pulled out my phone, opened a saved voicemail, and pressed play. It was Jenna's own voice from months earlier, saying plainly that she needed portfolio content for her business, and that she wanted Mom to keep Lauren out of the communications because she makes things complicated. The kitchen went dead silent, the kind of silence that vibrates in your chest because everyone knows they just heard the truth in the person's own voice. For the first time, Mom looked directly at Jenna, not with anger, but with hurt, the kind of hurt that comes from realizing your child has used your milestone as a stepping stone for personal gain. I didn't rub it in. I didn't gloat. I simply said, all I'm asking for is transparency. A public post from Jenna that acknowledges the vendor relationship and confirms refunds or redirections to the school's official channel. That's it. I wasn't asking for an apology or for her to admit every detail of what she had done. I wanted one clean acknowledgement that donors had been misled and one clear correction. That was the minimum. But Jenna refused. She crossed her arms, leaned back, and declared that she wouldn't humiliate herself to appease me, that I was the one making everything worse, and then, in a move that caught even me off guard, she blurted out that Mom had already changed her will months ago to avoid what she called complications caused by my supposed controlling nature. She said it casually, like it was just another piece of evidence against me, but in reality it was a grenade thrown onto the table. Mom didn't deny it. She looked down at her hands and admitted quietly that Jenna had convinced her to simplify her estate paperwork, and that in doing so, she had shifted things in a way that limited my role. I sat there, stunned for a moment, not because of the legal implications, but because it confirmed something I had always suspected, that Jenna had been maneuvering behind the scenes not just with the party, not just with the donors, but with the very future of how our family's legacy would be handled. I took a deep breath, nodded once, and said, okay. I didn't argue. I didn't accuse Mom of betrayal. I didn't break down. Instead, I dropped the final card I had been holding. I called a fiduciary last week, I said. Mom, we already have your appointment. The room froze. Jenna's face went red. Mom looked confused, then curious, then almost relieved, as if a door had just been cracked open that she hadn't realized she could walk through. I didn't explain further. I didn't have to. The message was clear. I wasn't asking for permission anymore. I had already taken steps to make sure this wouldn't spiral into another mess where Mom's future security was used as a pawn in Jenna's endless game of image management. In that moment, I realized something that had been building for years, but had never been said aloud. Silence is expensive. Every time I had chosen to bite my tongue, every time I had told myself to keep the peace, every time I had allowed Jenna to spin her stories unchecked, it had cost me something: my credibility, my influence, my peace of mind, and now, potentially, even my share in the family's future. And I was done paying that price. When the day of the fiduciary appointment arrived, I drove Mom to the office without making a scene about it, without lecturing her, and without even mentioning Jenna, because at that point it was no longer about proving who was right or who had sacrificed more. It was about making sure that Mom's future was secure and that her legacy could not be twisted, drained, or spun into someone else's portfolio material again. The fiduciary was calm, professional, and efficient, laying out exactly how the medical account had been mixed with event funds, explaining in straightforward terms why that created risks for her, and then presenting a plan that would separate everything into categories: medical costs covered by a protected account, living expenses tied to a trust with clear oversight, and a legacy fund that would be managed independently of either of us. It was not about giving me control or taking it away from Jenna. It was about putting Mom's finances and future into a structure where no one could manipulate them again. When Mom signed those documents, I saw something in her face shift, a kind of relief that she did not have to choose between daughters anymore, that she could protect herself without playing referee in our endless tug-of-war. That same week, I took the redirected donor funds and combined them with a modest contribution of my own to establish an official scholarship in Mom's name through the school district. I didn't do it with fanfare, I didn't make a press release, I didn't even tag family members. I just worked with the principal and the union rep to ensure everything was clean, official, and transparent. The school launched a post announcing the Patricia Hill Scholarship Fund, and the response from colleagues and former students was overwhelming. Comments poured in about how Mom had changed lives, how she deserved to be remembered not through a messy party, but through something that would actually help kids. That was the recognition she had always deserved, not balloons and centerpieces, but a lasting mark tied directly to the work she had poured herself into for decades. Jenna, of course, tried to salvage her image. She posted a long note on social media blaming miscommunication, saying she had never meant for anyone to misunderstand, and positioning herself as someone who had been unfairly targeted by family politics. But the truth was obvious. Her apology was hollow, her explanations were vague, and most importantly, no one cared anymore. The narrative had already shifted away from her curated party toward the scholarship, because people gravitate toward clarity and impact, not drama. Colleagues shared the scholarship link instead of her post. Donors praised the transparency of the school's fund, and Jenna's carefully crafted version of events crumbled without me lifting another finger. My dad reached out quietly, not with anger or judgment, but with something that felt almost like shame. He admitted that he had tuned out most of the conflict, telling himself that sisters fight and that it was better to stay out of it. But now that the dust was settling, he wanted to know what he had missed. I told him plainly that this was never about stealing a spotlight or dragging Jenna down. It was about not letting Mom's milestone be hijacked for someone else's brand. He nodded, not offering excuses, just listening, and in that moment I felt like maybe, finally, someone in the family actually understood what I had been carrying all along. The conversation with Mom was quieter, but heavier. We sat together with coffee one evening, and she admitted that she had looked away because Jenna was louder, because it was easier to let her manage things, because it seemed simpler to ignore the friction than to confront it. I told her I had enabled it too, by always stepping in quietly, by being the dependable one who never demanded recognition, by choosing silence, because I thought it was the noble thing to do. But silence had cost me too much, and it had cost her as well. She reached across the table, not with some dramatic apology, but with a kind of tired acknowledgement that she saw me differently now, not as the child who made things complicated, but as the one who had finally forced the truth into the open. After that, I went back to my album from the night of the party. I didn't delete it, but I added a new first image, a plain slide with a line of text that said, "Lesson learned, silence is expensive. Boundaries are cheaper." Underneath, I wrote one question for anyone who stumbled across it: do you know your true worth? I pinned it there, not as a victory lap, but as a marker, a reminder that this whole ordeal had never really been about cousins, shoutouts, or even a retirement party. It had been about worth, about what happens when you let other people define it for you, and about what changes when you finally take it back. Jenna has not forgiven me, and I am not sure if she ever will. She still circles, still throws out little jabs, still tries to frame herself as the injured party when she talks to relatives who want to believe her. But here is the truth I hold on to now: Mom's future is protected, her legacy is secure, and the scholarship has already begun to collect funds that will help real kids. I don't know where I stand with Jenna, and maybe I never will, but I do know that the next time someone tries to erase me, they will have to work a lot harder, because I am no longer interested in being quiet. And that, to me, is the cleanest revenge possible. Not destroying someone else, not even winning in a loud or dramatic way, but turning the tables so thoroughly that the game itself changes, leaving me standing with clean hands, while the person who tried to write me out of the story is forced to live with the silence of an audience that finally stopped believing her.